So we are discussing about different migration strategies. As you can see that there are 5 R's: rehost, refactor, re-architect, rebuild, and replace. Then in the planning part, we'll be discussing what are the requirements as part of migration, what should be the environment, what tools you should use, right? And then which stakeholders have been involved as part of migration, what is the total cost of ownership, right? Then evaluation and discovery and documentation, and then who are all the partners in this whole migration process. So first of all, what is migration and why we need it? Yeah, so it may be from one data center to your cloud, right? Or from one cloud to another cloud, depending upon your requirements. So mainly it's from on-premises to cloud. That is, if a company is planning to migrate their data centers, they want to switch to the cloud platform, right, from their own premises environment, and they want to decommission their data center and they want to go to the cloud, then that is mainly this migration is being used at that point. So you are moving from your own premises to your cloud environment. That's the main, and it can be hybrid as well. It's not necessary that you are fully migrating from your own premises to cloud. It can be a hybrid. I mean, where some of the applications will still be on your on-prem and some of the application will be on your cloud. So what are the migration steps involved in that? So the first thing is, what is your source? I mean, what is your current environment, right? And then what is your target? You have to prepare your source and target environments. I mean, what is your source environment? It is your own premises environment, and you have to identify the target environment, whether you want to migrate to Azure or AWS or it's a multi-cloud, right? That's the very first step. And you have to set up and start that application, and then fail over to Azure. So when we say we have the migration steps, we will come to those different 5 R's. What are which strategy you use, right? So you have to start that application. Means first you will be replicating it. You will not be fully migrate your local data center to Azure and discard your local data center immediately. In case you are stuck somewhere or some issues are there, you are gone. Your business is stuck, you are not able to access any applications. So it's required to do a kind of replication in the beginning, so that in the migration process, if an issue occurs, you have a failover process. Failover, I mean, you can do the rollback kind of stuff. Okay. Then database migration steps. If you are only concerned with migrating your data, right, then you have to do the migration of your schemas, right? Create and run your database migration service. So Azure provide you a kind of PaaS service that is known as Azure Database Migration Service, and then you have to just monitor it, the migration process. So it's up to you whether you want to use your own process to migrate it or you want to use database migration service. It's a PaaS-based service. It's an effortless. It's a you won't be having any much efforts. You need not to do some from the setup from the scratch, because it's a PaaS-based solution, right? So this is much suggested one as compared to you use your own customized way to do the migration, and this is more secure as well, right? And then that is important. That is really important from the cost perspective. You should know that what is the total cost of ownership, right? So from the cost management perspective, you should analyze in advance that what should be the whole cost of migration. Are you having the sufficient budget for that? Is that budget approved, or you are still in pipeline and you are still in discussion? What if your budget is a constraint in the middle of the migration? What you will do? You don't have that much budget, you're stuck somewhere, and that is what you have to analyze in advance before you actually start the migration process. right? And then we'll be discussing about monitoring part, that logging and CPU utilization, that will come to it later. So the main thing which we are discussing about it, costing part, create an assessment. Okay, if I go to this, the total cost of ownership, let me open this link, total cost of ownership. So this is the total cost of ownership calculator, which you can make use of it while calculating your migration process, right? What will be the total cost of ownership? Let it open. You can select the servers, on-premises workload. What is your on-premises workload? You have to enter the details, which environment you want to migrate, which servers, what is the operating system, how many servers, is it Windows based or it is Linux based, then databases details, which database servers you are using, which license you are using, right? Is it SQL, is it PostgreSQL, or it is Oracle database, which versions are there, how many instances are running. Then storage part, what is the storage space of your on-prem infrastructure, what is the networking bandwidth you are using. Once you provide all these details, it will help you to find out the total cost of ownership of the migration process, right? So that will give you a high level overview, what will be the total cost you have to spend, the total money you have to spend in this migration process. And that will give you a very high level estimate value, that this is the estimate value. If you are okay with that, then only you should start this migration process. Otherwise, you have to take your call whether this is beneficial to use your on-premises environment or it is beneficial to use your cloud environment. Okay. So assessment, which I just told you that assessment is important, right? This assessment will help you to streamline your migration process, right? So in this assessment, you have to discover your virtual machines and create the assessments. We don't have any kind of local on-premises environment, so there's nothing that in the lab work we can demonstrate or something, right? So this is when you are actually migrating from your on-prem to cloud environment. Okay, so discover machines, right? So this is discovering machine means you have to collect the appliances into your Hyper-V or VMware hosting mechanism, right? Which all hosting type of hosting you are using, and you will gather the whole data about your VMs and your machines which you are using, their CPU utilization, their memory, RAM, network, right? This is just I have shown you in that as well, in the total cost of ownership. So this is to discover about your own premises environment. You should know all the details about these factors before you actually start the migration process. This is known as discover machines, discovery, to discover your own environment, to know that what exactly you are using, right? And then create the assessment. You have to create that assessment. So the migration assesses an environment's readiness to be migrated to the Azure. This assessment will let you know how good you are to migrate. Are you ready? This will tell you the readiness of the migration, right? So it will tell you, for example, you can see this green color graphic circle. It is telling you the readiness for Azure. Or is there any red mark? Is there any roadblocks? Red means not ready for Azure, right? Amber color means ready with conditions, and green color means readiness unknown. Still the sufficient information is not provided. Here you can say monthly cost estimate. So it is telling you that this will be the monthly cost estimate post migration on Azure, and this assessment will give you a clear understanding that how good you are as part of the migration process. Then migrating servers with the Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is a PaaS-based service. Azure Migrate assessment identifies candidates for server migration to Azure, right? And this Azure Migrate runs agentless migration of virtual and physical servers into the Azure. So this is a PaaS-based service, Azure Migrate, that will help you to migrate your services from on-prem to Azure. So here is the screenshot, migrating the virtual machine to production. So you have to select migrate from the replicating machines, shut down the VMs for the final replication, and migrate during off-peak hours. So this is your migration replicating machines which you want to migrate from on-prem to Azure. You will shut down your VMs, you will do the final replication of your VMs, and then migrate during the off-peak hours. Can you see the migrate button here? This migrate will start migrating your VMs, and you have to do it during the off-peak hours, not the working hours. There are many reasons. One is that during the day hours, when the traffic is high, people are accessing it, and you don't want any kind of downtime or any disturbance in the migration process. Also, when the people are accessing your on-prem servers, the speed will be slow, and during the off-peak hours, the speed will be fast. The migration speed will be fast, and it will be uninterrupted. That's the reason that you have to do this migration process during the off-peak hours. Then after you migrate it, there is a post-migration activities that review the security settings of your VMs, restrict the network security groups of unused services, and deploy Azure disk encryption. Okay, so these are the from the post-migration activity perspective. It's mainly from the security perspective. Whether do you have unused ports, unused network accesses, is your disk is unencrypted? If yes, then encrypt it. Security settings of your VMs. All this is you have to do as part of post-migration activity. And then to increase the resiliency, the availability of your infrastructure, you have to do the backup, scheduled backup. So Azure backup is there, and you have to add a scheduled backup. Then replicate machines to a secondary region using the site recovery. Right, Azure Site Recovery. Through that, you have to replicate to the secondary region in case there is a downtime in that particular region. To increase the high availability, you have to replicate your machines and complete cleanup tasks for remaining on-premises servers. Once you migrate and you verified that everything is fully functioning and working, then you have to start the cleanup task of the remaining on-premises servers. Remove servers from the local backups, remove raw disk files from the SAN storage to free up the space. So that is the whole process you need to follow as part of this migration. Then database specific. If you have database type of migration, which I have just shown you in that total cost of ownership, you have to specify what kind of database you are currently using in your on-prem. Whether it's Oracle, MySQL, Postgre, MongoDB, Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, SQL Server, any kind of server, database server you can migrate to Azure. Then you will complete the assessment based upon that server, right? So offline migration requires shutting down the servers at the start of the migration for the service. There can be two ways you can migrate your databases. One is offline migration. You have to shut down your servers and start the migration process. Online migration means it uses a continuous synchronization of the live data, allowing you a cutover to the Azure replica database at any time. So that is online means you will do into the slots that up to this particular cutoff value, you do the migration, complete it, take the second slot, complete it. Likewise, you do not need to make your database down. So that's your online migration. That's a bit slow as compared to offline, and the only advantage is that your application will not be completely down. You don't have any downtime, but comparatively slow, and it will take time. Offline is faster, but the disadvantage is that you have the downtime. Okay, Azure Database Migration Service, as I told you, is a PaaS-based service that will help you to smoothly migrate your database to the Azure. So this is what about the overview. It's that offline and online migrations. right? So these are the prerequisites. You have to download migration assistant, create the virtual machine network instance, configure network security group, configure Windows firewall and credentials. Okay, so these are the prerequisites that you need to follow. Then assess the on-premises databases. Use data migration assistant to create assessment project. Select the source and the target servers. Provide connection details. Choose the database migrate. So this is your assessment. So these steps you need to follow during the assessment. You have to use that data migration assistant. Source and target servers. I told you that you have to be aware about your existing environment, source and the target servers where you want to migrate it. Then you have to provide the connection details and then choose the database to migrate to. Right? Migrate the schema using the data migration assistant. So you can migrate the schema. Right? So how you can migrate the schema using this service? These are the steps. I will not go step by step here because I'll share this slides to share with you. You can go through it. But this is the, on a very high level, this is the schema migration where you have to migrate the schema. And then once you migrate your schema, then you migrate the data. Okay. First you migrate your schema and then you migrate your data. So that is the whole process.